Okay, so this is a pretty no-tech production, so this screen and everything is off. Just to break with what we've been listening to and the different, I mean, if Peter, like just legends of the game, I was saying to Tommy Welch there, like we've got a fella who's introduced as Peter the Great, like imagine going around being introduced as Peter the Great everywhere you go. So the caliber of these fellas and what they've done in the game and what they have to offer because of that is very, very valuable in a very specific way. And I don't really have that value because I played for Wexford and we were pretty shit in the 10 years that I played, other than a couple of years where we kind of got ourselves together. When we had Paddy here working with us a bit. So it's different to that. It's a little bit of a break from that and maybe a bit of a break from other things that we've done in the day. It's an invite to you to take part. You have your own freedom of choice and your own ability to say no to that and exercise that choice whenever you feel like it. There may be people coming and going, I'm not sure, there's still a couple of people making their way into the room, but just try and focus for a while on just your own seat for a while. I say that because and I think this has great value for coaches because it has great values for teachers, and I see that in coaching and for teachers. When kids come in, for example, into the classroom at 9 o'clock in the morning, the most chaotic time for anybody who has kids, and we've all been kids, the most chaotic time of anybody's day is probably from 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And you come in as a teacher and all of this chaotic energy comes straight in the door at you, and then you start from 9 o'clock as if this hasn't happened. But of course it has happened, and all of those stresses are carried through, and some kids wouldn't have had breakfast, and you have all of these things that come in to the room with you. And so it's important to draw a line from what has gone before, to create a stop, and then you can go where you want to go. Those guys are talking about the experience of the game. What I'm interested in is a few layers beneath that, stripping it back a huge amount to see what our why is, why we go, why we do it. What are the blocks at a why level? What are we blocking in ourselves when we go to work with young people? So that's the intro that I hadn't in any way scripted or planned and went on a little bit too long. For now, I want you to sit up in your seats if you could with your hands on your lap. And when you're ready, and if you're comfortable, close your eyes and just allow a little bit of stillness to come over you. You can relax your shoulders, your arms, your legs, just let go of everything. You'll start to become aware of the sounds in the room, the fan, my voice, the plates outside, the music of what happens, what's happening around us. If you just tune into your feet, how your feet feel, just put your attention on your feet up to your ankles, to your calves, up to your knees, feeling it come, feel that wave come up to your thighs, hamstrings, glutes, to your back, stomach, chest. Feel if there's any tension or any stress along the way and try and soften it and relax it. Up to your shoulders. We carry a lot on our shoulders, so just try and let those go if there's any stress there. Your chin, mouth, nose, to your forehead, your hair. And think about where you've come from this morning. The different places we've all come from, but the same places that unite all of us in coming here. your parish, your place, your club, your home, your family. And think about the speakers that you've heard this morning. Allow some of the things you've heard to just come to the surface now, things that you picked up, you enjoyed, were worthwhile, were valuable, stuff that you could write off, of no value, stuff that you'd like to challenge, stuff people got away with saying without being challenged, maybe. Just take 3 slow, deep breaths down into your stomach. No effort in it, just fill your body, fill your legs, fill your arms with air. Breathe deeply in. Hold it. And slowly let it go. Again, deeply in. And let go. For the last time, breathe in and let go. And again, just allow a scan to go down your body, this time starting with your hair, down to your forehead, down your face, down to your shoulders. Feel the relaxation in your shoulders, chest, right down. In your own time, I'll leave you 20 seconds with that, and again you'll hear the sounds in the room as well, but stay focused on just releasing all tension from your body. In your own time, you can come back into the room. We won't do any more meditation, I promise. Maybe some visualization. So that's a tool to change the energy in a room, from that kind of franticness of people coming and going and what they're bringing in and what they're leaving with or what they're thinking about outside of just being here. And it's not often we get that chance to just take 2 or 3 minutes to sit and be with ourselves and feel that comfort or discomfort or strain or stress or happiness or whatever it is those things are that come over you in your quiet times. So I came up this morning from Auniscall in West Kerry, where I'm located now. I had a child last Saturday. And so if I get excessively emotional at any stage, it's because it's been an emotional week. But my reason for being here and the reason that I left my child and my partner and came up on the train today to chat to you is there's a good few reasons, but to simplify it, I believe at the moment, this is just my belief or my opinion, I believe that over the last 30, 40, 50 years maybe, there has been somewhat of a cultural takeover in Ireland. A very, very solid, a very, very beautiful culture that existed here for a long time is somewhat threatened by American culture, or by British culture, or by a culture that comes in through our televisions and our radio stations and wherever else that it comes from, Hollywood and these places. And I'm really sincerely interested in what the power is that we're not allowing it to come to the surface. We're accepting this as normal. It's becoming more and more normal. And what we can do to counter that. And very specifically, what role the GAA has in countering that. I believe it's a huge one. And so I come here. From a hurling standpoint or from a football standpoint, we'll refer to the poor cousin as well, with the football standpoint too. From a GAA standpoint, when I criticise or challenge or maybe talk about the current culture. And there's a lot of talk about the current culture within GA of it not being enjoyable, or it's become very machine-like, and the inter-county game is very possession-based and fear-based and all of that stuff. Sweeper systems, the works. When I talk about that, or the quantification in the game, the excessive analysis and all of that stuff, it's not capitalism or communism. It's not two poles. It's not there should be none. Let's go back to the 60s. It's not all of one thing, hippie hurling as I call it, or all of the other, which is, the more robotic approach. There's a balance. There's a balance between those two things. And in my opinion, at the moment, we've just tipped slightly towards one end, and that needs to be addressed. Addressed. And it is terrible to have him here in one way, but we do have him here, and so I can't really say anything else, because he is here, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it's worked out. But if he wasn't here, I'd be talking about him the same way anyway. In my understanding of the game and in my experiences of the game, playing with Wexford, playing against Kilkenny, playing against whoever else we played against, Tommy, to me, and he speaks the very same way as he played, wide open, honest. The odd dig. That's one part of it. But the big part of it for me, the big part of Tommy Welch's game and what Tommy Welch represents to the game, is the joy in which he played it. When he cleared the ball, you could tell that everything in him cleared the ball, that he was still attached to the ball as it was leaving. He was just so joyful in how he did what he did. When we talk about the possibilities that young players have, technical ability is so crucial to master and perfect the skills, and athletic ability and knowledge of diet, and all of these things are very, very important things, there's no doubt about it. But at the very core of it is that joy. To play with joy, to create a lifelong learner where they want to learn all the time. They want to learn because you've created the conditions in which they are joyful. And they get to explore the game on that basis. Now that's as young players. That changes obviously as we go up. As it gets more serious, as it gets more, the strength and conditioning comes in and all that stuff comes in. But to keep a hold of that joy at the core is the possibility we have. And it's the possibility we have because Tommy did it. Now other players do it too, they play with great joy. But because Tommy took it to the level that he took it to, where that level was so high in both performance but also joy, he didn't lose out to the machine of... I remember talking to Tommy one time when we were over in Dubai, and I won't say too much about that trip either because it wouldn't be a very good idea. But I will say, as I was asking him about the weights and the running, and he just laughed at me. He just laughed, and he wasn't laughing at me, he was laughing with me, and we both kind of laughed because he was like, the weights, like, they're telling me I need to be able to lift all this stuff, but I don't. I need to be able to play the game. I need to want the ball more than the other fella. And I don't care what he's lifted. I don't care how hard he's run. I don't care how fit he is. If he doesn't want the ball more than I want it, he's not going to get it. And I don't know how many times we all saw, and we all had the privilege of seeing, the ball bouncing up into Tommy Welch's hand in the forest of 10 hurls, or coming down and catching balls above fellas who are a foot higher than him. And that's by design to some degree, but you're inviting a lot of luck in at the same time as well. And I think the game responded to Tommy's nature towards the game itself, his honesty with the game gave back as well. Is that fair to say, Tommy? Is that, yeah, okay, because I don't want to suppose too much. So that's the kind of background. I know, lads, nice and light. Sorry, I'm going in a little bit heavy from the start, but this is what we're protecting. This is what we're looking after. This is the jewel that we have in this place. And all from everywhere that we came from this morning. That's what we're looking for. So there was a speaker last year, and actually I think I have it. I think I have it written down here. There was a speaker here last year, Colm O'Connor. Was anybody here last year? And who's here? You remember Colm O'Connor's address last year? It was really, really something special. And he said this during it. What if the fire and passion of sport was transferred into mental health or homelessness in Ireland? The world would be transformed. The reason it's not done is because the everyday reality doesn't have that magic. So I give you that quote because of what we did before Christmas with the Gaelic Voices for Change movement. Gordon Manning was here with us, one of the fellas that slept out, a journalist who slept out with us as well, and not slept out for a story. We just invited him and he came. And the intention behind it, and the intention is really, really important, because we got a criticism for maybe politicising the GAA, but it was never a political thing. There was no political ideology behind it. There was no attachment to anything behind it. It didn't matter where anything came from in it. It was a very, very simple idea, and it started with two people. We all got together. We all accepted that there are social issues that we could contribute on. They listed off 20, 30 men invited to a building over across Dublin who came from all over the country because they said there's some social issues here that maybe we can contribute to. And so we listed them off. Homelessness was one, and it was coming up to Christmas. We said, let's take that on. It was that simple. Tried to organise an event in Croke Park. There was already something happening here, so we left it. And then two people got together and they said, why don't we just sleep out ourselves and see what it feels like, and then maybe we'll get some answers then. And then a few more said, well, sure, we'll go in on that too, and we'll do it as well. We'll feel what it's like to do it, and then we'll have maybe a little bit more awareness of how we can help. And then that grew, and we said, okay, we'll just do it ourselves, and we won't tell anybody about it. We won't tell journalists before, but the energy behind it just kept growing and growing and growing, and more people wanted to get involved. And so we said, right, we have something strong here, so let's just release it. Let's see what kind of, can we collect money, or what can we contribute? But the main idea behind it, and it's still behind it, is to raise awareness. Now, you have to park what you believe that phrase means for a second if you think that's about raising awareness of homelessness. We all know that exists. We weren't trying to raise anybody's awareness about homelessness because we all know it's there. The idea was to raise our own awareness, the level of our awareness, our ability to understand, to feel, and to empathise what other people were going through. So we went to Focus Ireland, and they said, okay, you have to be in a partnership with us, and so we can't do anything with anybody else. And we got an early insight. Then we were asked, would we come to Croke Park and hold the cup and stand in with maybe some homeless people that they would take from somewhere and put them into a photograph with these players. 400 20 to 40-year-olds in the prime of their strength, prime of their health, men and women, wanted to make a difference and do something. And they wanted us to stand in a photograph. And that's not Focus Ireland's fault. Socially, that's what's expected of players when you limit them to their athletic identity. Just players. That's shoulder to the wheel. They wanted to work, they wanted to go out and to do something. But a photograph was all that was requested. So we did it our own way. And it was a great success. The raising awareness I'm going to come back to, because it's part of the next point. And the title on the beast, on the aspect of the beast, if I could focus in on that for a moment before going to the beauty. Has anybody here ever heard of the myth of the Minotaur? You ever heard that Greek? A few heads nodding. A few. It's an old. I think it's a Greek myth. And myths are kind of relegated to stories for children, but myths are really kind of like the psychoanalysis of the ancient people. So they have a value. They were told for a reason. So in the Minotaur myth, if I can briefly sum it up for you, you had King Minos, who was the king of Crete, I think, the king of Crete, and his wife Pasiphae. And Pasiphae was down on the beach one day, and a bull god of some sort came out of the water, out of the sea, the old representation of the bull god. And the bull is animal energy in us. That's what it's a representation of. The bull god came out, and Pasiphae said, okay, I have to sleep with that bull. I'm just so attracted to it. And so she had Daedalus, who I believe had problems with feathers later on in life, but Daedalus built a cow, and she got into the cow and mated with the bull. And she gave birth to the Minotaur, a half man, half woman. I know you probably think I'm fucking crazy at this point, but this does go somewhere. So she mates with the bull, and she gives birth to the Minotaur. And now King Minos is the king. He's the king of the society. He is the one, the golden one, the great one. Everything must be perfect in the king's world. He definitely can't have a half man, half bull as a son. And so he builds underneath the city a labyrinth. And he places the bull, the half man, half bull, the Minotaur, in the middle of the labyrinth, of which nobody can get into. But once a month, they must send in a few of the Athenian boys and girls that they hijack under pillaging or whatever. They send them in, and that's what the Minotaur feeds on. So this goes on for a while. And then Theseus, who's the warrior, like the Athenian Cuchulainn, he says, we can't have this anymore. I'm going to go in and I'm going to sort this problem out. So he sails over to Crete, and he goes into the labyrinth. And on the way into the labyrinth, he meets Ariadne, who's the daughter of the king and queen, and she gives him a piece of wool, and the piece of wool might bring this story back to people. He brings the piece of wool in, kills the Minotaur, and walks back out, and sails back to Crete champion, the hero who's solved the problem. But the reason for the story is this, and it's very, very simple. The bull and the Minotaur is shame. It's shame is what it is. The shame of King Minos. He couldn't have this shame be seen, so he builds this labyrinth under the city. Now we're all in the city, societal city, the culture, the overground, the above ground of Irish society, what we all expect of each other in social norms and how we interact with each other and how we talk to each other. That's the city. And under the city is the shame. And what is argued by one of Ireland's most beautiful, beautiful philosophers, a guy called John Moriarty, is that we don't need a Cuchulainn. We don't need a Theseus to go in and kill the Minotaur. What we need to do is walk into the Colosseum, walk into the labyrinth, take the Minotaur by the hand and lead him out into the city and say, this is my shame. And then it doesn't own you anymore, because you're feeding, the children that they're feeding from Athens is to feed the shame, the things you must sacrifice to your shame. So when I heard this explanation, a lot of things began to make sense in things that we keep at bay, things that we just kind of keep a little bit below the surface. Now that's a very, in some senses, an intense version of that story. But it has all kinds of very, very valuable lessons for us. Particularly, I feel, having worked with coaches, very valuable lessons. As a parent now, I can see where the lessons are already. That frustration that builds when a baby just keeps crying, and you're trying to get it asleep, or you're trying to make it stop crying, and your partner is doing something, the head flops over, like, Jeannie, will you hold him properly? And this kind of, a bit of aggression comes to the fore. And you're like, okay, that's what that is. That's a bit of aggression. What's that from? Because the fact that she made a mistake is obviously not the problem. The problem is your own aggression. And so the awareness that we're trying to build, and the awareness that we're talking about building, is the awareness of how we're interacting with the world, how we're interacting with ourselves. Are we violent with ourselves? Are we very critical of ourselves? Does that criticism stem then to the kids that we work with? Are we joyful in ourselves, and is that what's communicated? the great line I heard about Tommy again, and it was from Brian Cody, and we talked about this on News Talk, and it was talking about the structures and the systems and who needs to go where and who needs to do what and what all the roles are. And we were like, well, Tommy, what was it like for you? What would Brian say to you before going out on the field? Go out, Tommy, and take over the field like you always do. That was Brian Cody's advice to Tommy. Go out there and take over the field like you always do. I mean, what else would you do? What an invite that is from a coach to a player. Just before I came on, Paddy Butler stood in front of me and said, you have an influence. You have an important and a positive influence. That's what he stood in front of me and said. And so that gives you strength. So what are the messages that we're communicating? What are we not communicating because there are certain things that are holding us back? That's something that I think is worth exploration, because we have, and in Pat Daly's work, I mean, we have it all. We have it all in the GA. We have it all. There's no doubt we have everything that we need. And we now have the foresight of working with young people that's invaluable. The steps that he's talking about. There's so many different, is it anagrams they're called? The use of letters, mnemonics, or whatever it is. I can't remember all of them. But we have all of that in place. Where this is going to come down to, how we roll this out, how we make a really positive change, how we stop a cultural takeover from outside of ourselves, is to empower our young people to be absolutely brilliant, to be magical with the game, to be magical with themselves. Again, we need the systems and we need the structures. We need the drills and we need to, well, perfect, I'm not sure, but we definitely need to practice, and we need to practice a lot. And there is monotony and there is boredom and there's all those things. But if they impinge too much on the magic of the game, we're going to be under pressure. And I think we're in a slight bit of danger of that happening. The feedback seems to be, now there's a lot of very, very positive feedback, but this seems to be increasingly going where inter-county players, and Peter Canavan said it, and said it quite candidly. You know, yeah, it's great, or maybe it was Stephen MacDonald, like the 10-year-old and the joy in 10-year-old, but like the county players, the senior inter-county players aren't really enjoying it anymore. And that's not an alarm bell. What's the point in enjoying it at 10 if you can't also enjoy it at 25? What's the point in that? Of course we should be enjoying it at 25. We should be enjoying it more than we ever should, and not just because we win in All-Ireland. Because the game itself is worthy of enjoyment. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, I want to do a visualization, which is something that inter-county players do. Well, more than inter-county players do it, loads of people do it. People do visualizations all the time in business, the corporate world, sport, all kinds of places. And it's your own journey. And again, you have choice. You take part or you don't take part, it's your choice. But it's just to go into and explore what I'm talking about a little bit more. So, again, if you could sit up with your backs relatively straight in the chair. And just find a relaxed position, and in your own time, close your eyes. Again, take in the sounds in the room. Try to listen a little bit further away, a softer sound than you've ever listened to before. You can do a quick scan of your body, starting from your feet up. And now I'd like to picture yourself leaving your front door. You hear the familiar sound of the door closing, and you turn and walk towards your car. You open the car door, you feel that familiar feel of your car door opening, the sound that goes with it. You sit into your car, turn on the ignition, you know the engine sound, and you drive down the road. And after a little while, you pull into familiar gates, the gates of your GAA club. You drive in, and some maybe it's a lane, and some it's straight into a car park. Maybe for others, there's neither. And you get out of your car, close the door again, and walk towards the dressing room. You walk in down the hall, and you go to the dressing room that your team always goes to. You get in, you know the smell, you know the sound. And over in the corner, there's one kid just putting his gear into his bag, left behind after everybody else. And as you get over close to him, you realize that it's you as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, starting out in the club. Of course, he doesn't recognize you, and you chat back and forth about the game, about the club, about football, about hurling, about school. And then he asks you a question. Is there any time where you were disappointed with yourself as a coach? Where you reacted to something in a way that you weren't proud of? That you're not happy with? That you wish you could change in some way? You tell him. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. You chat a bit more, and then it's time for you to go. But before you go, you have one piece of advice for him. One piece of advice. And you tell him what it was, or what it is. And you say your goodbyes, and you turn and you go to the dressing room door, familiar dressing room door. And just before you leave, he has some advice for you too. You say your goodbyes, and you go down the corridor, the familiar corridor, back out under the blue sky. Your pitch is out in front of you. Over to your car. Open the door, get back in, and drive out to the entrance of your GAA club. You turn left or you turn right for home. You drive back. Pull up again at your house. Open the door and go back inside. You're hearing the sounds in the room again. Your light scan of your body. From your head right down to your feet. And in your own time, you come back into the room. I want you to take 2 minutes now. Anybody beside you, either in 2s, 3s, or whatever it is, any part of those 3 things, what were they? Or what was the experience like? If you don't want to go into it, what was the experience like? What the advice was, what the advice you gave, or what that event was, what thing that happened, what that was like. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, just dig straight into it. Please. What was it like for you?
The voice that was coming back to me is to have empathy.
Have empathy. Why? Why? Have empathy for...
Every player
Is that very hard to do for managers because you've got so many different influences?
Sorry?
Is it very hard to do for managers because there's so many different influences?
Yeah.
And then your own influence?
Yeah. So that was it.
Sorry, could you actually, honestly, the people who've come in, can you leave for 1 second? We're not finished. And I can't have you come in, I'm sorry. The door shouldn't be opened. You'll have to go back out. Jimmy, no problem. A couple of minutes, no problem, Jimmy. To be more empathetic. Wise 5-year-old. A wise 5-year-old. Okay. Have you any response to that? One of the things here was, if you don't mind me saying, Mick Loftus. Good GA now. Empathy from the 5-year-old, the wisest 5-year-old, like a Buddha 5-year-old, to have empathy for the players as a coach. And we were saying there's difficulty in that because you've got so many different kids and energies and things coming at you in the room that to have empathy is very, very different for everybody, and to attend to that. And I added in that also you're trying to clear out what's in your own way, what you can't see clearly about what's happening in front of you because you're in your own way, if that makes sense. Anybody else? What was the experience like, or was there of any benefit? Yeah? What is it? Peter?
I told my 5-year-old self to enjoy the beauty of the game more so than the hardness and toughness and the having to win. The beauty of what to enjoy that.
Great. Same as from your child as from your wife. Stop talking. Think before you speak. And is that you'll just go? Yeah. Does anybody else identify with that? Anybody else identify with just sometimes just talking too fast and not actually just sitting back a little bit? What's that? Talking too much. In what way? Lecture. Yeah. 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 So for this is 40 minutes. This thing is done. Sorry now, Jimmy, but this thing is done. This whole way is finished. The pulpit, the adult, this is what it has to be. This is the way. This is how you do everything. That's finished. The young people don't get it anymore. And they're right not to get it because we don't know. We only know for ourselves. But their experience is different. They have to discover their own joy. You can't give that to them. Often, you'll be in your own way because you'll just speak because that's maybe your tendency and you haven't processed why you just speak. Maybe you could step back for say, okay, why am I thinking that? What's the value of that? Is there value in saying that? Okay, I won't say that today. Is that possible? Is that a possible reaction? And you've said it, and thanks for the courage for saying it, but everybody else is thinking different things along the same lines. How we get in our own way. How we get out of our own way. And let them, how do we foster and create the conditions in which they can create their own competition, their own joy, their own experience, their own skills, their own interaction with the game? How do we create the conditions for that to happen? Is now the way. And we understand that. I see it in the GA. We understand it, and we understand it really, really well. But I believe, and maybe it's just for myself, maybe I'm wrong to put this on anybody else, but I believe as coaches at times our own shit is in our way. And if we're going to really coach, we have to take on some of that shit. Because they don't deserve it. That's your stuff. You have to go after that. You have to try and process it and understand it. Stand back a little bit. Listen to what's going on. And I've done a little bit of that. And I live often in West Kerry, and I went out into the wild places of Ireland. I went off and lived in Ballyferriter and tried to process and understand who I was, what am I doing, what's my worth here, what's my value to anything. And then I come up here and I'm sorry, but I see Sky Sports written up here and I'm speaking about these things. And they're taking that culture, I'm giving that from my experiences that I earned in Ireland, in my home, out in the West and out in these places and on GA fields everywhere. My coaches, my father is here, coached me from a young age to love the game. And I don't like seeing this culture take over. I don't like seeing it because I think we're made of way more. The shit that's coming over from America, it's pittance compared to what we have here. The value we have as Irish people, it's irrelevant compared to what we have. And until we start tapping into that, we're going to keep following it. And the GA has that role to play because we're connected to it. We're connected to it in a network all over the country that any sport, any organisation in the world would be and is and are envious of. That's our reality. That's the organisation that we represent. And if we give that away cheaply, I'm not going to come up here with that gold. Other people aren't going to come up with their gold. You're not going to come up here with your gold and share it because you don't believe in what it's for. So I said, I've had a child, so I'm a little bit emotional, I'm sorry. But I believe that very, very strongly. And I didn't get that this week when I was being emotional. I got it when I was out in West Kerry on my own, in pits of despair and misery and depression, wondering about what the fuck is going on. And then you come to these understandings because this country has those answers for us. Our landscape, our poetry, our music, our writers, our hurlers, our footballers. When you stop looking at them as, stand in here for a photograph, you start looking at them for who they are. Strong young men, strong young women who have something to contribute, and not just on the field. They're not just their athletic identity. So as coaches, we have the potential to create the conditions into which that energy comes through. And it's not going to be done by anybody representing a corporation who says, this is the 5 steps to the top. It's done by going into yourself a little bit. And that's our responsibility, I think, as coaches. Thanks very much.